Thank you, Wendy, for that introduction. And I'm happy to be here and to be with all of you tonight. I've been with some of you. Sorry about that. Don't worry about it. Just, I know the automatic reaction is to jump up, but, resist no matter what, okay? All right. If I lose everything else, I can just hang on to the podium. My last refuge is the podium. We all know that. Anyway, I'm happy to be here, happy to have a chance to talk to you about my conception of what you're moving toward, okay, in terms of your program. And I really welcome questions when I finish the presentation, because I think many of you are teachers, who have been involved in the program, and I think you will have some natural questions that will just pop out. And some of you are parents, and you will have questions too, but perhaps of a different nature, and others as community members, again, your questions might be different, but very welcome in terms of talking about this. One of the things that I'm really pleased to see Loudon doing is to be taking a proactive stance in terms of redesigning a program, but doing it with the idea of plenty of time to do that redesign. So for today, for example, we were working a little bit on a curriculum framework for gifted and talented, just the bare bones start of that. But that's the kind of product that you'll need heading into a program, but you've got over a year to work on that design, have a lot of input, probably from most of you in this room, on the design as it moves forward. So, change is a good thing, and especially managed change is a good thing. So I'm going to try to talk to you about this model with that in mind. And as Wendy said, you're going to get a sprinkling of a little bit of theory, lots of research, but sort of organized, synthesized for you, so it's not going to be too hard to take. And then, what that all means or should mean potentially for practice, and thinking about it specifically in light of your, current program. So maybe the natural question to start with is why, would you decide to move to more of a talent development model in discrete subjects, as opposed to staying with your more interdisciplinary orientation that you currently have? And I think there's lots of reasons for why programs would do this. Many programs for the gifted, I won't say all, but many, in the state of Virginia as well as in other states, have chosen this direction, okay? And they've chosen it, I think, with some very real reasons to do so. The reasons listed here aren't necessarily a complete list, but it gives you an idea of some of the thinking behind why you might move in this direction. One is that the way schools are organized is not going to change. Schools are organized on an age grade model and organized according to subject matter domains. The assessment system in your school system, as well as in most other school systems around the country, is organized again on a discrete subject model. So students are assessed in terms of progress on learning based on those core subject areas. My point is, gifted has to swim upstream on so many issues all the time. This is one we don't really have to swim upstream on unless we absolutely put ourselves in the position of doing so. Namely, we can organize programs according to subjects so that we can talk to people in the schools about what we really want when it comes to acceleration and enrichment and counseling, and that it all centers around an organizational model with which everyone is familiar, because we're all working on the same model, moving in the same direction. For gifted kids, talent development is not just about strengths. Talent development is about areas of learning in which these students have significant differences from the norm. I think we have to always remember that. Talent development is a nice metaphor. It works for everybody, but in terms of the translation of it, it is not the same for everybody. And so that's perhaps one of the learnings that has to be communicated to others within the environment. So school organizational structures are one thing, but learning structures are another. Our whole organization of curriculum is on a scope and sequence model that starts with kindergarten and ends up when kids graduate from high school. And if they take advanced placement courses or dual enrollment courses, which they do here in Loudoun County, you're still looking at that continuation of a discrete subject matter model right into those calibrated college level courses that they take, during their high school years. So the whole model of learning within the context of Loudoun and most school districts is very much organized on this kind of scope and sequence by discrete subject area. So if in fact your programs are not so organized in that fashion, it becomes much more challenging in terms of what the curriculum is going to be. How does the curriculum align to what the general curriculum is all about? How do these students and where do these students place in terms of their future learning, especially if they're interested in particular areas? That's usually general ability translates into specific aptitude anyway. It's just a question of when, in terms of the student's interest and the student's desire to focus in one area as opposed to multiple. And then there's the whole notion of what we know about learning and talent development, that fundamentally, when we look at the idea of gifted education, very early on, there is a shift to specific areas of learning. We now have studies that would suggest that kids who are STEM-oriented declare that interest and that orientation towards STEM as early as 6th grade. And so if we wanted to do a really good job with career counseling of the gifted, we would intervene at 7th grade in terms of what does the aptitude profile look like, what does the interest profile look like, and what does the value profile look like. And if those are aligned in the ways that they typically tend to be, then we're very safe in saying, yes, this is a STEM kid. This is a direction that we should be encouraging in terms of advanced opportunities in those areas right now, 7th grade and onward. The data are not quite as strong in terms of looking at the tilt toward the humanities or the arts, but we suspect, given the data that we do have available, that that same tilt is there as well, and for gifted students as early as middle school. So that's an example where what we have come to know about talent development would suggest that we need to really rethink how we organize programs for gifted and talented students and how we think about the areas into which they may go. Because the end game of any strong gifted program is to create, productive, individuals who can reach the highest level of ability and transform that into a career, transform that into a life calling, if you will, and that's really where we're headed. So if we think about it as a talent development phenomenon, not as you're gifted and now we're going to do some things with you in a special program, but rather you've been identified as intellectually gifted, but now what are your specific aptitudes? And how do your specific aptitudes translate into a more natural progression of how schools are organized? So I think having the rationale is an important place to start.